by another day. Helicopterground.com.
Hey, it's Kenny with Helicopter Line Ground School. Have a good presentation ready for you today. We've been here here I've beaten the mic up already. We've been cleaning this hangar like crazy for the last week, getting ready for what's next. It's big, exciting stuff. Some of you already know what it is. Some of you may not. Stay tuned because there's lots and lots of cool stuff going to be happening. For today, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give away 2 copies of Helicopter Check Ride, the paperback, 2 copies of Top 10 Check Ride Tips, and we're going to ask you 4 questions to win those out of the new Private Pilot Study Guide. Link down for that below. And I'm going to ask basic, easy private pilot stuff. It is going to be so easy, whether you're a student or private. If you can't answer these 4 questions, then you better be hitting the books. We're going to do that after we go through 7 different things that came up just this week on a one-on-one I did with one of our professional pilot members. One of the things we'll be talking about is use of a checklist in the cockpit and a knee board and what you can do there. And I'm going to give a plug. This young man sent these to me. Or I don't know, he's young. A gentleman sent me quite a while ago, and I never used them. And I'll tell you about that when we get to that part of it. Non-paid, he just sent them to me out of the blue, 2 of those. And then first, I'm going to have Heather walk over here and help me. We've got 2 members going up on the Hogs Wall of Fame, and we just want to share what they had to say. So Heather will bring up the first one, Michael Remy. She'll bring it over and show to you the camera. He said, "Thank you, Hogs. Today just turned 67. So another one. We've had a rash of these lately. Guys in their 60s getting their ratings. This is so cool. I love it. Thank you for the great product. Thank you also, Hogs. Played a big part in my education. I fly a corporate jet, and the business wanted me to get the add-on. And we also have a Bell 47. I'm off to that school with Flight Safety International on the 15th. Awesome. That is so freaking incredible. And the guy I'm going to talk about that I did the one-on-ones with this week, he's like more closer to my age, and he was making a comment about people going, well, you're over 40. And I'm like, you know what? Bull crap. You can learn at any age. I get tired of hearing that. All right, Heather's going to show you the next one. This is really good. I think this is going to go on the homepage. Heather got this from Nick Long. I found Hogs while browsing YouTube prior to the beginning of my helicopter training for private. So I came in with a pretty strong ground knowledge head start. Both my CFIs admitted this. On top of my already great ground instruction at my school, which is awesome, I found Hogs extremely useful during long car commutes or workouts. The easy access to the very structured categories made brushing up topics a breeze. Prior to my check ride, I went through all the videos 1 or 2 times, which people tell us that do the best. They've been through it, videos 2 to 3 times. I got recommended. I got a 93 in my knowledge test and passed my check ride with no issues in either the oral or practical portions. 10-10 recommended and have already signed up for Hogs instrument course. So thank you both, Nick and Michael. So there you go. And those are going up on the Hogs wall. Heather was going to put them up, and she goes, well, let's just show them live before I put them up. Yesterday or the day before, we went over and made sure we got the wall all cleaned up and was checking pictures, make sure we had everybody up there. So lots of cool, fun stuff happening. So what we're going to do is go through these 7 things. And over the Halloween special, we offered a pro pilot special with 6 one-on-ones with me. I haven't done any one-on-ones for a while. Decided to do that as a Halloween special. And the first gentleman to take me up on this offer, we've had a great time. We've done 2 of them so far, one this week and one last week. And as I was working with him, it became obvious to me very quickly that, well, it's like I said when we announced those packages, I said, usually when somebody's struggling, it's not usually that hard to kind of get them straightened out, right? And it was fun doing the one-on-one. I love talking to this guy. And as he's telling me the story about his flight training and where he's at, these things just start popping up. So I made a list of them, of the 7 top things that popped up in our 2 one-hour sessions, of things that he would talk about and where he was having trouble. And because they're so common, I thought, let's do a live event and cover them. The first one, slow, smooth, methodical. Everything we do in helicopter training should be slow, smooth, and methodical. Everything I did in the helicopter EMS world was slow, smooth, methodical. Doesn't matter you're going on you're going on a flight out to a car wreck, going to a scene. You don't operate any differently than if you're just taking an aircraft to maintenance, because you can't get excited. You can't get involved in what's going on emotionally. You have to walk to the aircraft. You have to walk around the aircraft. You pick up to a hover and you do your hover pre-takeoff checks. And if you've got the space to do a normal takeoff, you do the normal slow takeoff. And some people don't understand that, and they find that, they don't understand that. They're like, oh, well, but you got to go. It's an emergency. You can't fly that way. Flying like it's an emergency is can very quickly turn into a problem. And this gentleman, when we were talking, he was admitting to me about, he was having troubles, and we'll talk about some of the different ones in the next 6. But this kept coming up, and I'm like, all right, man, everything has to be slow, smooth, methodical. It should be that way in training. It should be that way for your check ride. When you get out in the real world and start flying, it should be slow, smooth, methodical. Now, I just had a buddy of mine show me a picture of an ag sprayer today of this guy flying up and doing this backwards wild thing into above the truck to get fuel or put product on. And I get that some environments, people do things out of the realm of slow, smooth, and methodical. It's just never a good idea, okay? Everything you should do is slow, smooth, and methodical. On all the check rides I've done all these years, the examiner will always say, today, you were slow, smooth, methodical. Or they'll tell the examiner that, well, Kenny, everything he taught me was slow, smooth, methodical. And that's the way it's got to be. Even inputs in the aircraft when you're dealing with an emergency are still slow, smooth, and methodical. There's never a reason to just slam a control, okay? So if you're struggling, think back for a second. Are you rushing what you're doing in the aircraft? Are you rushing the pre-flight? Are you rushing to get there that day? Everything we do should be slow, smooth, and methodical. All right, let's move to the next one. And I'm going to try to keep these fairly short because you know me. I'll turn this into an hour-and-a-half event if I'm not careful. All right, so checklist with no one around. And this gentleman has never done this. And he told me before I brought this up, he said, man, I'm struggling through the checklist. And he's pre-solo at this point. And, his instructor's, getting aggravated with him, when he's, fumbling a little bit in the aircraft. And so I said, have you ever went out and just sat in the helicopter with nobody around, when it's quiet, and work through the checklist as a practice? And he said, no, I've never done that. And I go back to one of the guys who was responsible as the kind of the check pilot or the stage check pilot for me on my private, commercial, and CFI. He was the guy we were all terrified of, right? Because the guys I flew with every day, they were my buddies. Then this guy come in and you're always terrified. But I learned some of the best things from this. His name was Adrian, by the way. Adrian, where are you? I haven't seen you in forever. Anyway, Adrian always kind of come in and kick my ass just a little bit, right? But I've taken those things that I learned from Adrian, and they've been huge for me through my career and using these things as an instructor. And he come in to check me out one time, probably at the private level. I'm pretty sure this was private level. And he's like, after a flight we do, he goes, Kenny, what you need to do, you're struggling in the aircraft during the startup. He said, when there's nobody on the schedule, I keep kicking the mic. When there's nobody on the schedule, he said, go out in the hangar, take your checklist, and do most everything on the checklist with the exception of turning the power on, right? Because if you turn the power on, you sit there for an hour, you're going to run the battery down, or you could run the battery down. But mentally go sit in the aircraft, take the checklist, and just go through it and work through each step. Go through, again, leaving the power off, do the switches, don't move anything that could cause a problem when the aircraft's not running. But most switches and most things you can do, most checks you can do, just sit alone in the aircraft and take your time and just practice and just run through that checklist several times and get yourself a good flow. And I did that. I went out and did exactly what Adrian suggested that I do, and it worked. It was phenomenal. And again, these simple things, if nobody ever tells you and you've never thought of it, it's the simple little tricks that sometimes just turn things around for people. I told him that in the first one. That was the first week. This week when I talked to him, he's like, dude, I did that, and it helped so much. And I'm like, see? It's these little tiny things, like going out, getting in the aircraft when you're struggling, and practicing going through your checklist. Again, power off, take your time, nobody around bothering you, just you, the aircraft, and the checklist, okay? Big help if you're struggling, learn the checklist. I know I did. Heather, go ahead and click to number 3, because this is going to be continuing on the same topic. Checklist finding cockpit items. The other thing Adrian told me one day, we were out flying and I was fumbling around for carb heat or whatever. And if you're flying the Robinson and you have the carb heat, there's certain positions for everything and you've got your little guard. And he said, I need you to go out in the aircraft and practice reaching down and finding everything, like, the safety for your collective, where the mixture control is at, where the carb heat is at, and get used to reaching down and finding these different things in the cockpit while you're looking outside, so that when you're flying, you're not looking down all the time, trying to find this, trying to find that. If you take the time to just sit there, again, when nobody's around, sit there and just find these things. Find your safety. Make sure what's the procedure? Do you reach around the cyclic for one? Are you going to the left of the cyclic for this thing that you're grabbing? And you can use this for any aircraft. So going out in the aircraft, taking your time, learning that checklist, going through it, finding things without looking at them, all very, very helpful. And back to this checklist, and I want to mention this gentleman. It's been a couple years since he sent these. I did see his website still up. It's moagear.net. He's not paying me anything. He just sent these, and I thought, you know what? I've been meaning to show these all along. So the other thing I did during the startup is, actually, go to number 4, Heather, because I think this is still going to be along the same lines. This is good. Starting over, disrupted or failed startup, okay? So, another day. I think this is when I was getting ready for commercial. I'm still struggling a little bit because I wasn't flying a lot. And anyway, I remember Adrian going, well, you're losing your place on the checklist, and you're wasting time and, blades are spinning. So what I did, very simply, and this I just came up with my own, this is our Hogs official checklist here, by the way. I had a knee board when I was doing my private and commercial NCFI, and I used them. And what I decided to do is, my knee board I had at that time had this plastic strap here, just like this one has right now, okay? Plastic strap going across the knee board. What I would do is I would go ahead and get my checklist loose, and as I would go through the checklist, I would just slide this down to item number 1. Complete that, come back, slide it up to item number 2. Complete that, come back, check, slide it up. Go do the next thing. That worked out for me because I would get lost when I would get further down through the checklist, and especially if you got an instructor sitting beside you and the blades are spinning and he's huffing and puffing and you're going, oh, God, where was I? That was my little thing that I did. I just came up with. And after time, of course, you get faster with the checklist. You get more comfortable and it becomes easier. But I did that for quite some time. And I even did the same thing when I went to the EMS environment. I'm learning a twin-engine aircraft with dual systems in a completely different environment, aircraft I'm not familiar with. I did the same thing in EMS. That checklist would be right there, and I would just use that so that I could go through the checklist, taking my time, and not lose my place, which leads into this one. Again, these things are all coming up in these 2 one-on-ones I did with this professional pilot member. The next one, he was telling me a story about something. He was going through the checklist, and the instructor's going, "Would you forget something? Did you forget something?" And he got all frustrated trying to figure out what it was that he wasn't finding. And I said, has anybody ever mentioned if you get disrupted during a startup, like say you haven't even started the engine yet, like whatever the case is. Something happens, something's out of place. You got to get out and walk up to the FBO and get something and come back. I think it's best, and somebody taught me, just go back and start from the beginning. You don't want to come back and try to pick up through a checklist when you got partway through it and someone interrupted you, or you got confused for a second and your heart's starting racing because you're trying to get through this startup. Anything that disrupts that checklist, just go back and start over. That way you're not missing anything. You know exactly where you were. And same thing again with a failed start. Now, depending on whether you're in a piston-powered or turbine-powered, there's a number of things that could happen. And, of course, in training, it might be something as simple as you forgot to turn the magnetos on. Little tiny things like that happens. You miss the mixture, or most people leave the mixture off or leave it on. This is very common in flight training. People just leave the fuel valve on. And then someone will come along and they'll turn it off. So then you go to start, you're used to the fuel valve being on. Somebody else has turned it off. You didn't use the checklist properly, and you just can't get the engine to start because the fuel valve's off. I'll add a super embarrassing story that I haven't told in a while. I got my turbine job flying 135 charter, and I got to fly big NASCAR racer. Waltrip. Not Daryl, Michael Waltrip. Okay? So him and his guys come out, pick him up. I go to the airport, meet him, and we go out and we get in a Jet Ranger. And we all left the fuel valve on in the Jet Ranger. Now a new company comes along and says, hey, the checklist says off at the end of the flight. We want you to do that. Okay. So now we're disrupted, right? And I try to do things from memory that day. And for whatever reason, I shut it off like I was supposed to when I landed to pick him up. I didn't turn it back on. So how embarrassing is that when you have a celebrity like Michael Waltrip on board and you fire up the Jet Ranger helicopter and you're all excited taking the celebrity on a Jet Ranger flight, and the engine goes up and then the engine dies? How bad and horrible do you feel? I felt like a complete idiot. What'd I do? I went back, went through the checklist, figured out what I did. I didn't say a word, and they didn't say anything either, and I was nervous, right? Heart racing. So he doesn't say a word. We get to where we're going. I shut it down. I ask him to stay in the aircraft till the blades are done moving, and Michael leans over the seat and goes, hey, how come the aircraft died when you started it? And I went, well, I explained kind of what I just explained to you and told him that the difference in the fuel valve, that we were doing it one way and da-da-da. And he was, he was nice about it, but he questioned why the aircraft died when I started it up. And that with good reason. So if you have a failed start or you're getting ready to start and you have to stop because, again, something interrupted you, just go back to the beginning of your checklist and work through it step by step. I think is always going to be the best way to do it. All right. Let's go to the next one, Heather. Just again, because I know I'll go on too long. That says the Almighty Tower God. Okay, the Almighty Tower God, which is what I entitled this email, because I think this one for this member, the Almighty Tower God is causing a lot of the problems. And he's in complicated airspace, and he's learning in complicated airspace. So I give his instructors credit for, there's a lot that's going on. They're training in controlled airspace. There's complicated airspace going in and out in that area. So to do his cross countries, he's got to be really good on the radio. And he was admitting the struggles he was having. And so I went back to my old story of the Almighty Tower God. And that comes from my initial training, working on my private pilot. I was getting ready to go do my long cross country in a Schweitzer by myself. And I was terrified, right? I'm a student pilot. And I had to fly to a controlled airport. And I was terrified to talk to the tower. And which is really kind of stupid because I'm ex-law enforcement. I'm ex-fire department. I had a towing service for 10 years. We had our own radio equipment for all of our trucks. I'm used to talking on a radio, and I'm used to talking on a radio in stressful situations. Why is it learning helicopters, I was going back to I've never talked on a radio before. So I'm all terrified of talking to the tower and approach on this long cross country. And my instructor at the time, good buddy of mine named Eddie, and he's like, dude, he's not the almighty tower god. He's like, that guy up there in the tower puts his pants on every day in the morning, just like you and I do. He's up there to do a job, and he's there to help you. Just talk to him, So it's always just been kind of a joke, the almighty tower god, because it's very easy to get intimidated talking to the tower. And I get that. And the one thing I've been telling this member is, you just got to keep after it. I'm going to grab a water here. I think it's hiding back here. Maybe not. Maybe I drink it. There it is. So my train of thought. Oh, so it's just talk to the guy, right? Or talk to the woman if it's a woman in the tower. It's been my experience. Most of the time, the people in the towers are usually pretty easy to work with. Once in a while, you might get somebody who's kind of cranky, but most of the time, if you tell them who you are, where you are, and what you want to do, even if you don't have the best lingo and you don't have all the lingo down yet, just be as plain English as you can be and just talk to them. So I remember being terrified on that cross-country trip way back. And then, because I trained mainly in uncontrolled airspace, I get working as a CFI. One of the first jobs I get, I'm like 300-hour pilot or whatever, and I go to a bigger city where we're going to fly in Class Delta. There's another Class Delta beside it. There's a Class Bravo on the other side and a Class Charlie to the south. And the pilot that I flew with, awesome guy. He was a Vietnam veteran and cool, laid-back individual. And I fessed up at some point I think we went to fly in the Class Bravo, and I was all nervous. And he told me something very simple that's always helped. He said, hey, I know you only have limited experience with talking to controlled airports. He said, here's the trick. Here's the key. No matter how nervous you are, sound confident on the radio, even when you're not. And he said, if you sound confident, you will be amazed at how far you will get and how they'll treat you at the tower versus, and you've done it or you've heard it. You've heard somebody on a radio in the aircraft going, you've heard the person, right? So even if you're nervous, just make sure making sure you have your frequencies down so that you have time to be prepared to make that call. Be thinking before you get to that airspace. Prior to the flight, you should have all the frequencies written down. You know where they're at. You know at what point you're going to call the tower. The preparation of being ready and mentally thinking about what you're going to say before you get there is a big, huge help. And his hint when he said, I'm telling you, you will get confident, sound confident, and you'll be surprised at how far you will get just by sounding confident on the radio. And I'm here to tell you that it works. And one other point, the other thing that helped me get over the almighty tower god experience was same place that I'm talking about. I'm a new CFI, and they wanted us to do things a little bit different than the way the flight school was operating, and we actually got invited up to the tower. Now, some of you may be able to do this, some of you may not. We were allowed, and a couple of us as CFIs went up to the tower, and we probably spent maybe half hour, 45 minutes up there. And that was a huge help in just making me realize that, hey, this guy's just like my buddy Eddie said years ago. The guy puts his pants on every day, just like everybody, like you and me and everybody else. He's up there doing a job. And making that trip to the tower and being able to meet the guy that we were, hearing his voice on the radio all the time, to meet him one-on-one and have a short discussion about our helicopter operations and what we do and how we get from the ramp out to the runway. The problem there was students are lifting up off the dolly. They're calling out the dolly before liftoff. And by the time they get up, do their hover checks, and get out to the runway, they'd have to go, hey, helicopter, hang on. Now I've got an airplane coming in. At the tower, he said, you know what? We'll talk to your flight school for you if you'd like, but you know what we'd like you guys to do? We'd like you to get up to a hover, get yourself positioned, get all that stuff done that you normally do. And in the area where you can move without talking to us, just get as close as you can and be ready. And when you tell us you're ready to go, be ready to go. That was huge. That helped me throughout my career. in other situations along the line. So that visit to the tower was also a great, big, huge help for me. All right, let's go to the next one, Heather. What do we got for number 6? Oh, all right, here we go. This is why I want to move through the other ones, because here we go. I need a drink on this one. So yesterday, on our second one-on-one, we're talking and we're going along, and I'm picking up this theme about him getting super tired and all these struggles he's having, and I started thinking, I'm wondering how long his instructors have been flying him. So I take a pen and I go, hey, and I stopped him at a certain point, and I go, I'm going to write something down here on a piece of paper, just so you know. I go, tell me, how far are you into your flight? How many minutes are into your flight when you start getting tired and start having these problems in the aircraft where the instructor is getting aggravated with you? And he's like, oh, yeah, they're usually like, oh, man, probably 1.4, 1.5, 1.6. And I went, all right, stop the press. We're in day 2. I know where the problem here is. I said, when a person gets tired? I go, it's 45 to 50 minutes. That's when your performance starts to go down. He pulls his logbook out, and I actually waited a few minutes. We talked about what I'm going to talk about here in the 1-hour flight lesson. And the more he talked, I go, all right, you know what? Go ahead and go find that logbook. Go get it. Open up to page 1, your first page of training. I go, what are the flight times? Started off not bad. It was like, 1.0, 1.2, 1.1. I'm like, okay. But then, like the fourth lesson, it goes to 1.7, 1.8, 1.9, 1.7. I'm going, whoa, stop. I said, I've been sticking up for these guys until now. And I said, I will fight this one to my grave. Now, I'm not talking about cross countries. When you're out doing cross country dual and you're learning those kinds of things, that's different. When you're brand new and someone is flying you 1.4, 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, 1.9 on the first page, they are stealing your money. You are getting tired. You are not doing as well. I became a police officer at the age of 24. Shortly after becoming a police officer, the chief says, hey, you want to be a firearms instructor? Yeah, I'd love it. So he sent me to the Indiana Law Enforcement Academy. Well, first I went to a local school, actually in South Bend, on instructor development course. And in this instructor development course, they said, guys, whether you're teaching in the classroom or you're taking your guys out on the range, the human brain needs a break at around 50 minutes to an hour when learning a new complicated skill. And they said, even if it's a 5-minute break, 10-minute break, let them get up, walk around, stretch, go get a drink of water, whatever the case is. Do not keep someone in a classroom more than an hour, which, years later, I get completely annoyed if I'm in a class somewhere and it's going on to an hour and a half. I'm going, God, let us out of here. That's where I first learned in instructor development course about the 1 hour, training somebody a new skill for a new hour. Then that first job that I worked at where I met the Vietnam era pilot who taught me a lot of stuff. I mean, oh my God, so much inside hogs came from this Vietnam pilot that I only spent a couple days with. Losing my train of thought. Okay, I got it. He said, the owner of that flight school says, yeah, you know what? We really want to keep our students like at about an hour on a flight lesson. I'm like, okay, that sounds good. And he said, the way he explained it all these years ago was for the first 20 minutes of your 1 hour dual flight, you're warming up, things are starting to improve, you're getting better. That second 20 minutes, you're really kind of honing things in, and things are starting to go really, really well, and you're making progress, and you're learning, and you're putting things together. And then that third 20 minutes of that hour, you start to drop off a little bit like this. And he said, so that's why we like to have our students right at about an hour. That's just good training. It's good for their progress. And of course I agreed. So again, learning that as a new CFI. Now, 20 years later, hands down, if you come here and fly with me in the helicopter that'll be sitting behind me here very soon, we will be back here either on the ground or on the dolly at 50 minutes. After my 20 years of flying, teaching, getting people through check rides, all kinds of ratings, I don't even need the clock anymore. I know when it's 45 to 50 minutes because I know by the way you are performing in the aircraft. And maybe you're Superman and you don't ever get tired. One in I don't know how many cases. The average person, I know exactly when it's 50 minutes. And here's what happens. And I learned from watching this over the years. This is why now I stick it to the 50. On the ground at 50. That way, you do your shutdown, students taking their time learning the proper shutdown. You're going to be 0.9 or 1.0 by the time you get everything shut off, okay? So, losing my train of thought again here. 1 hour flight lesson, back on the ground. Losing my train of thought. What was I saying, Heather? Yeah. Okay. So I got it. So here's what happens when you let somebody go a little longer. Let's say you're at that 45, 50 minutes. And let's say you're just working on a normal takeoffs, normal landings. You're doing your pattern. Let's say you're even getting ready for solo. And that you've done 3 or 4 normal approaches. That last one was pretty darn good, and you're right about 50 minutes. I'll always go, well, we should just go in. And if somebody's like, well, let's go one more time. Okay. Go around one more time, and then that one won't be as good. And then what happens? They don't want to quit on a bad note. They'll go, well, come on, let's go do it one more time. Okay. So you go around again, and it gets worse. Pretty soon you're at an hour, or you're over an hour, but they want to prove. They don't want to leave on a bad note, and you end up 1.1, 1.2. It just goes downhill. It doesn't get any better. And that's why over the years, I've perfected it to where we're done at 50 minutes. We're going to go in and land. And if you want to fly again, we'll fly again. Or we'll even break it up into 2 45-minute flights. Going past an hour, to me, doesn't make any sense. And that was the other thing that popped up with this member, ProPilot member, when he said, here's how it really started. I remember now. I go, oh, where was he start having problems? And he goes, oh, like on our approach number 10 or 12. And I'm like, approach 10 or 12? Holy hell, how many times are you going around the pattern in an hour? And that's where the conversation went. I remember now, right? So, and I'll argue this. No, I won't. That's my thoughts on it. And I told him, I said, you know what? Everything you've told me so far, I can understand why your CFIs are doing that. I go, this one, no, it's wrong. It's horse manure. Anything over an hour, somebody's wasting your money. Now, another example. The Enstrom that used to sit back here, my buddy Nick, one of my first students. Nick was a doctor, worked super hard, didn't get many days off a week. So when he'd come to the airport, we'd fly an hour in the Enstrom that the flight school owned. And he knew I liked quitting at an hour, and he's like, hey, we got our hour in. Can we just go play and just do some autos? And I'm like, if you want to just go play and do autos, knowing that this isn't going to be, real super conducive to learning, sure. And so he'd go, come on, let's go do it, right? So we'd do it. So I'm not saying if you want to fly over an hour and you've got the money to do it and you want to fly a little extra, you can. I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying if you are the person who is trying to get done on a certain fixed amount of money, or you're a person trying to get done in a certain amount of time, the best training is going to be if you're keeping them at an hour. I had a state trooper, female trooper. She was a great student, and she was trying to get her private in time to interview with the state police to get a spot in the aviation unit. And she was flying with somebody else, and she asked me if I'd help her. And the kid she was flying with, good kid, but he was flying the hell out of her. And so we go out and fly, and she said, I want to fly every day, all day. And I'm like, okay, we're not going to fly every day, all day. Well, how about 3 times a day, 2 times a day? So she pushed me, and I let her, this was back earlier in my career. Let's say before I went to EMS, I was building my time, and she has a check ride like a week away. And we're flying a couple, 2 or 3 times a day, every day. And I'm getting frustrated. She's getting frustrated. Every day it's just getting worse. And finally, she called me teach for whatever reason. The one day I'm like, you know what? Just set it down. I go, I'm going to go inside. When you're done, come in. And I went and sat down frustrated. And she comes walking in with her head hanging kind of low. And she sat down beside me. And she goes, ain't working, is it, teach? And I'm like, no, it's not working. And if you want to be done, you know what the problem is? This flying every day, all day, you got to fly. I go, you know what? And I know you don't want to do it. You need to take a freaking break. And she's like, I've only got, a week or whatever. And I'm like, we need to take a break. Like a day or 2 days. Let's just take a break, breathe. Let's schedule 1 flight and we'll come back and let's see what happens. Boom. We go out after a small break and she flew. It was unbelievable. Right? Taking that break. And she says, you're right. Flying every day, all the time, pushing so hard was no good. It was no good for either one of us. And I'm like, I know. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So in another 2 or 3 flights, we had her done, ready. I was flying the EMS at the time. Her check ride was on the day I was flying the EMS. She flew 2.5 hours to a check ride on her own and went and passed. Why? Because we slowed down and went, this is not working. So it plays into how much can any one, person really handle. So let's go to the next one. And he got me riled on that one. I was just like, okay, I've been calm and cool for the last 2 days. Now my blood's boiling. I'm like, this has got to change, man. I go, if you really want to get to your goal in the time you want to get it, I said, you're going to have to stand up to these guys. And I go, or make up an excuse and just go, hey, guys, I can only fly an hour today. Don't even blame them. Just flat out say, I need to keep my hour of training, for the next couple weeks, whatever. So number 7, flying 3 times per week. Okay, now he gets credit on that one and his instructors get credit on that one. I asked him after we talked about the 1 hour, he said, yeah, I'm flying religiously 3 times a week. And I'm like, that's perfect. I love 3 times a week. And I think now a person even does good at 2 times a week. 1 time a week, you can make progress, but it seems like you're always just kind of catching up. You can fly more. I mean, we've got members that went and did off the street to Double I in 6 months. But those guys, they studied like crazy. And you'd have to like not be working another job. Like you're at a flight school and that's all you're doing. If you're a person who's got a family and you're working a job and you're flying part-time, all this plays into it. So I was really happy when he said they fly 3 times per week. And I'm like, that is awesome. 3 times a week I think is great. Of course, you can go a little more if you want to, and you can go less. But a person, to me, and I am not bragging, I've trained a ton of people, and I've done a ton of check rides. And the people that do the best and make the most progress for their money fly 2 to 3 times a week. The whole hour kind of thing plays into that. But I think flying 3 times a week is usually the best for your money. Just seems to work out. So I was really, really, really happy with that one. All right, maybe I should get to some book giveaways. Otherwise, I could keep rolling on these topics for a while, but I hope some of these 7 help you because as we were talking, I'm like, these things are popping out, man. And it's just like, it's not because I'm a genius. It's because I've seen it and I know and I've been in it. I've taught heavy for years. Even when I was flying in EMS, I flew my days off. I ran my business on my days off. I've always stayed active as an instructor, and I just know what I see in the cockpit, and I know when I see what works and what doesn't work. I mean, that's ultimately the bottom line. Okay, so let's go to the Private Pilot Study Guide. I picked out easy ones in the beginning. I'm going to give away one helicopter check ride. And I'm going to give that away first because with this pro member, he kept referring back to this book. And he's like, well, it's like when you wrote about this. And I'm like, I'm glad you read that. Well, what about when you read this? And I'm like, you know what? I haven't really pumped this book lately, but you know what? There is a lot of good stuff in there. And even though it's called Helicopter Check Ride, it's got a little bit about me in the beginning, and that's how he's like, hey, we've got some similar things in our lives, you know, close to my age and been through some of the kind of same things. There's a lot of good stuff in this book. I got links down below if you want the paperback copy. We have these in stock. Heather ships these to you for $7 shipping and handling. So I'm going to give away this one first because he brought it up, and I was so glad to see it again and thought, you know, there is a lot of good stuff in that book. So I tabbed this so it's easy. I think Heather's going to maybe watch. Am I going to watch the chat? How busy are we? How many people are in here? 47. Ooh, 47. Woo, we got a nice crowd. Hell yeah. That's right. YouTube says you can cuss after the first 30 seconds. So, hell yeah. I'm just being me. So, okay. I've got YouTube up right here. So I can see. Heather's got YouTube over there. You going to come over here and help me watch? Or what? Why don't you come over here? Because here's the thing with these contests. We know the way our chat works, sometimes you as the viewer, you see somebody else come up in a different order. So she's going to help me watch so we can see who the winners are. We're going by our chat. We even had a guy that emailed Heather, well, I'm going to send you a picture of what my chat shows. We can't do that. We have to go by what our chat shows here. I'm on a laptop. She's on another computer. I'm like, I don't even want us two to get confused. So she's going to help me watch here. And these are very simple. So for helicopter check ride, the very simple question is, when must the aircraft position lights be on? What's the simple? First one to get it gets helicopter check ride. Heather is going to ship this to you because we have them in stock here. So you email heather@helicopterground.com and Heather will ship you helicopter check ride. So the first person to type in, and we know there's a little lag on YouTube, so the first person to type in the correct answer for when must aircraft position lights be on gets helicopter check ride. So we're watching, don't see anything moving. We always go through this. Should pop up soon. Should we do the next question while we're waiting on the first question? I guess you can check your chat and make sure yours shows the same as me. Nice. Glenn Roberts, okay? More than that. That's not good enough. Nope, you guys see? Everybody messes up. Night. Come on. When must the aircraft position lights be on? Come on, guys. There we go. Well, we're close. Okay, that's the first one, right? That's even close. Mm-hmm. Sunset to sunrise. Sundown to sunup. I'm going, come on, that's so easy. It's sunset to sunrise. I'm sorry, Tommy K, you got it. I mean, it's basic, simple private pilot stuff, man. It is sunset to sunrise. That's how the red reads, and that's how the reg is in our book. Tommy, email heather@helicopterground.com. Tell her which book you won, Helicopter Check Ride. Give her your address, and she will ship it out. Next question. And we'll see how it goes on this one. Here's the answer. Okay, we covered this before. Yep. It's got to be in one form. It can't be any other. And this is easy, but people will mess this up. And you don't want to mess this up on check ride. When is a flight review due? First person to tell us when a flight review is due, and you got to tell it in the right form, is, which book we doing? Let's do alternate. Okay. Top 10 on this one. So the first one to answer, when is a flight review due, is going to get top 10 check ride tips. And while we're waiting, I was going to mention this. This is a tribute to my dad. This was on his desk at high school. He was athletic director, guidance counselor, baseball coach, everything under the sun sports he did. And that was on his desk at school, in his office. And I thought, you know what? I'll put that on there today. He's got another one that's he had when he was in Korea. He was a Korean war vet, and he had another one that's all fancy. I'll bring in sometime. All right, I see. Is this the first one that's popped up? Correct? Looks like it, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Munchers, 2010, 24 months. You got it. That's it. Email heather@helicopterground.com, Munchers, with your real name and your email. Not your email. Email her with your name and address.
Yes, please.
And she will send you top 10 check ride tips. So, and again, there's links down below. If you don't win, you want a paperback copy, she'll send it to you for $7. And the study guide links down below too. Okay, for helicopter check ride. And people mess this one up too. It's simple, but I'm asking easy questions that people do screw up, and they even screw these up on check rides. Who is responsible for maintaining the aircraft in an airworthy condition, including inspections and AD compliance? Right there, Heather, is the correct answer. Some people may say that. That's not correct. This is the correct answer. So the first person to answer, who is responsible to determine, whoops, I just blew the next one. Well, kind of. Who is responsible for maintaining the aircraft in an airworthy condition, including inspections and AD compliance? We are watching. Which book are we doing on this one? This one?
Helicopter check ride again. Oh,
there
yeah.
you go. There we got it. KP. That's the one that missed it a little bit ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay. KP and AK. You are the winner. Helicopter check ride. Email heather@helicopterground.com. Give her your shipping address, and Heather will ship you the book. So we got one more. Basic private pilot. Okay, see, now I'm going to change the question because they know what's coming next. So they're answering before I even answer the question. So I'm going to change it. Let's find an easy one. Ooh. This is a good one. I'm not going to say.
18?
Yeah. Okay. In section 2 of the POH or Rotorcraft Light Manual, do you have to comply with it? Do you have to comply with section 2? I'll make it easy. It's the limitations section. Do you have to comply to limitations? So the answer is very simply that right there. Easy peasy. That's top 10 check ride tips, right? All right, while we're waiting on the answer, it's a very simple answer. Don't see it yet.
Getting answers from the last question.
Heather has a special on 1 year. Got it. Who's the first one?
Cody.
Right there, right? That's the first one.
Yep,
Rocks 1989. You are the first to say yes according to our chat. And you'll verify that. So we saw the same thing, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's by our chat. Sorry, if your chat looks different, we can't help that fact. Email, that was this one?
Yep.
Email heather@helicopterground.com with your address, and she will ship that out. And Heather has a special code, and we decided, not a code, Heather has a deal on yearly. It's not as good as the Halloween, but it's still a deal. But we made up this deal. You have to text or call Heather to get the details. She's got a link. It's not public. It won't be in an email. It's not on our site. You can't find it anywhere. If you take the time to text or call Heather, can you bring up our phone number, Heather, while you're over there typing away? She's going to bring it up here on the screen. This is Heather's Hogs member customer service number. Heather, I'm getting tired. Heather. She monitors this 7 days a week. That's been our deal since COVID. She works a lot from home so she can monitor the phone 7 days a week. You can text or call Heather either way at that number. She always knows what's going on. She knows what the specials are. And Heather can help you with anything pretty much. If it gets real technical, she can always get a hold of one of us. But when it comes to memberships, upgrades, downgrades, refunds, anything, Heather can help you with that. If she has a question, she'll get a hold of us. I recently had a guy who said, well, Heather's only for like password logins or something. I'm like, that's not true. I never said Heather. I've said Heather is your member concierge. Member can help, member Heather Heather can help you with pretty much about anything. So don't hesitate to call or text Heather at 574-767-1797. We've got a professional pilot membership where you can talk to Daniel down below. He has several options. There's a link to either email him or sign up for a book a call where you enter your information. He will call you. Heather has the down low on everything else. And, man, I just keep bumping everything. Hope you enjoyed our show today. This was a little better than our last one. Our last one was, we spent some time to getting ready today. We got the hangar all cleaned up. We're proud of what's going on. We're glad to be back doing some live stuff. That was awesome having a bunch of people in here. Heck yeah. That's the best live event we've had in a while. So all the links are down below. Text Heather if you need anything. That study guide, this has over 400 questions. Operations Manager Brian Rutledge put this together. He spent 4 months making it. And it's tabbed up as he went through the practical test standards. We know that we'll soon be the ACS. Certificates and documents, airworthiness requirements, weather information, cross-country, airspace, performance and limitations, general aerodynamics, operational systems, aeromatical factors. He has each chapter, it will give you the questions where we left you space so you can self-test and write the answer in. And then in that same chapter, the same question is repeated with the correct answer. So you can go through and check your answers, write them in, and then go through and read the correct answer. This is not for sissies or wimps. This is for hardcore somebody who's going to spend some hours going through this. But if you want to really, 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 really nail a check ride, look at that. Over 400 questions. Brian Rutledge put this together this year. It's a pretty phenomenal piece. And just for stuff like this, it's easy. Just open up, start asking questions, man. I'll be using this next week on my next one-on-one with our pro pilot member. Awesome. Well, I'm going to get out of here so we can get moving on with our day. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you like the look of the studio. The Hogs Hangar. Things are changing fast. We've cleaned this place, got our studio back in gear. We had everything changed while we did the new aerodynamic videos inside Private Pilot. We rebuilt that whole entire section, and our artist took off this week, Tuesday. I took him to Indianapolis to fly back home to Colorado. He is going to work for us remotely. He is right now working on illustrations for our carb heat video, What You Need to Know. That carb heat video was done by Dave Redmond, same guy that did a lot of those aerodynamic videos that people loved and necessarily didn't want us to get rid of those videos because they liked Dave's teaching. But Dave wrote on a whiteboard, and particularly the green marker was really, really, really hard to see. So we brought an illustrator in to see if we could take those presentations and have him draw to Dave's teaching. And we weren't sure if we could pull it off. And Jason Cutter, who I know was here earlier, which you're going to hear his name more often here in the future. Hint, hint, about helicopters coming. He might have one, and I might have one if they're, something that's going to be happening. Anyway, he said, I didn't know how you were going to be able to pull that off and if it would work, but he said, nice job. And the members have been making comments in the aerodynamics section about how much they love the fact that we kept Dave's teaching and we added an illustrator drawing what Dave had drawn, but drawn it, with more color, and we go to that screen. People have really enjoyed it. So our Hogs illustrator, Ken Penn, is working on Carb Heat, What You Need to Know. That's the next one. And then I'm not sure where we're sending him next. We're all in agreement that we're going to keep him drawing images for us on any video where a hand drawing helps retention. And I can tell you, my aerodynamic knowledge is refreshed. And some of it I understand even better now than I did before because, I've been teaching that stuff for a lot of years. But when you take Dave's teaching, and then I'm helping an illustrator try to learn how to draw that, and then I'm in editing trying to put it all together, it's like honed my memory on aerodynamics. And in a couple areas, I'm like, wow, I never thought about that before until we were really dissecting the drawings and diving deep into it. So I even benefited from hiring an illustrator and going in and reworking these videos. I got a lot out of it. So I know that all of you as well. So there's still monthly. Oh, I see Dave Faulkner. I was hoping you'd be here today, Dave. Dave was here a couple months ago, and I thought about mentioning you today, Dave. So you can see behind me. Remember what it looked like here? Dave was here this summer, and I was wrapped up working on payroll, taxes, and setting up 401k for us and doing a bunch of stuff, and I was pulling my hair out. So it wasn't that I wasn't doing anything. I was doing behind-the-scenes things to make Hogs bigger and better. And Dave was here, and he's like, wow, this place kind of needs, this needs to get to be your happy place again. Well, it is. We're having a blast. We've been cleaning the hell out of it. We've got it spick and span. We've been washed every single wall. We've cleaned everything. We've rearranged the studio. Just getting ready for so much stuff that's going to happen. I'm glad, Dave Faulkner, that you got to, be here a few months ago and go out and enjoy. But now we're back, and we're back in a big way. Actually, we could say bigger, badder than ever. It's kind of the deal. All right. My throat's getting sore. I'm going to roll out. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. There's helicopterground.com for our self-sign-up options. Those are at helicopterground.com. Remember, it's a 24-hour test flight. You can go in, check out the training, decide if it's right for you. Keep as long as you like. Cancel anytime. Come back anytime. Remember, Heather at 574-767-1797 is your concierge. She can answer pretty much about 95% of anything you're going to want to know. She can answer. And if she has any trouble, she'll reach out to Brian, Daniel, or me, and we'll get you an answer. But she can handle most all of it. Remember, she's got a yearly deal going. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm going to shut up and walk away. Otherwise, I'll just keep talking and talking and talking and talking. Peace out. See ya.